Hey, what's up, guys? So I decided to add a fourth video to my realignment proposal series, and I decided to add one about the NCAA with the conferences. How I would shake things up with the conferences, like the Power 5 and then a few other of the non-Power 5 conferences. So appearing on your screen shortly will be how the conferences that I'm going to talk about in this video are currently aligned. So now that you guys have gotten to see how the conferences in the NCAA, at least 8 of the conferences, are aligned, I'm going to jump into my proposals about how I would structure them and which teams would go in which conference. So we'll start with the Big 12. These are the teams that I would have in the Big 12. Texas, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Baylor, Iowa State, Kansas, Kansas State, and then a reunion for the following 4 teams: Mizzou, Texas A&M, Nebraska, and Colorado. Honestly, those 4 teams that I just mentioned should never have left to go to other conferences. They should have stayed in the Big 12, even though Texas and Oklahoma were basically doing their best to try and drive everybody away at that point. Looking back, it was just kind of one of those, Texas and Oklahoma, they are who they are, so I think those 4 teams should have stayed. All right, now on to the SEC. These are the teams I would have in that conference going forward: Georgia, Florida, Auburn, Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Tennessee, Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, and Louisville would be a new addition to the conference. I think from a football perspective, it just doesn't feel like Louisville, at least when I watch them play, is a ACC team. To me, they kind of have more elements of what an SEC team would look like. Louisville tends to have a strong defense, and their offense can be pretty balanced, and that's, to me, basically the elements of having an SEC team. So that's just kind of where I feel like they should go. Now on to the ACC. These are the teams I would have moving forward: Tar Heels of North Carolina, Duke, Wake Forest, NC State, Florida State, Miami, Virginia, Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, and if I didn't say them already, Boston College, Clemson, and this new addition, South Carolina. South Carolina, to me, they don't have the structure of an SEC team. To me, it just doesn't seem right for South Carolina to be an SEC school. But I kind of feel like they have a better vibe in the ACC. And with all of these things that I propose, you don't have to agree with them. These are just kind of how I see fit. And if you have differences, that's fine. That's not a big deal. If we all thought the same, the world would be pretty boring, right? So, if you have a different opinion, that's okay. It is what it is. Now on to the Big Ten. These are the teams that I would have in that conference: Minnesota, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Purdue, Indiana, Illinois, Northwestern, Maryland, Rutgers, Iowa, and this edition of Notre Dame. Because Notre Dame, to me, just doesn't look like an ACC school. They do have more of a feel of a Big Ten team. I don't know, because it just... I just feel that Notre Dame would do well in the Big Ten, and they'd have, two schools in state in the same conference, being Purdue and Indiana. So I feel like that'd be good going forward. And now on to the Pac-12. These are the teams I would have in my list for that conference. Oregon, Oregon State, USC, Cal, Stanford, UCLA, Washington, Washington State, Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and in place of Colorado, because in my proposal they'd be going back to the Big 12, in their place, the University of Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. Why not? Because if you think about it, for all those teams in the Mountain West Conference where Hawaii is currently affiliated with, there's a lot of travel involved. Especially for some of the teams that are closer to like Nevada and Utah and some of those states, and Boise State too. I mean, that is a long, long travel. And in the Pac-12, the team with the furthest travel would be Utah, but Utah, I think, should stay in the Pac-12. And I think Hawaii would be pretty cool for the Pac-12 to have. So, and again, like I said, if you have a difference of opinion, that's fine. Okay, on to, speaking of that conference, the Mountain West Conference. This is how I would have it lined up. UNLV, Nevada, Utah State, Wyoming, Boise State, Air Force, San Diego State, Fresno State, San Jose State, Colorado State, and then the following two teams would be new additions to the conference. BYU and the return of TCU. I don't necessarily care either way whether TCU stays in the Big 12 or the Mountain West Conference, because I think they could flourish in either one. But I think they do have a slightly better fit in the Mountain West Conference. And for BYU, I think from a regional standpoint, like a geography standpoint, it would make sense to have them in the Mountain West Conference, because right now they're currently an independent school in football. But I feel like an affiliation with the Mountain West Conference would be best for that school going forward. All right, now let's discuss the American Athletic Conference. Under my proposal, it would include the following teams: Tulane, East Carolina, USF, UCF, Houston, SMU, Tulsa, Cincinnati, Memphis, Navy, and then the following two teams would be new to the conference: Army and Liberty. I feel like, so Liberty right now is an independent school at the FBS level, but I think an affiliation with any conference would be good for that school. And I think the conference that would make the most sense would be the American Athletic Conference. Just from like where some of the schools are located in that conference versus like Conference USA, for example, it just makes more sense to put the Liberty Flames in the American Athletic Conference. And then for Army, Having them in the American Athletic Conference in addition to Navy, I think it'd be good. Especially for like their annual game takes place after conference championship weekend, which still does not make sense to me, especially with the fact that Navy is in the American Athletic Conference already. Their rivalry game should be played on rivalry weekend. That's just kind of how I feel like it should be. And so, yeah, I think Army and the American Athletic Conference would be a good fit. And now there's one last conference I want to tackle here today, and it's Conference USA. And it would look like this: Marshall, FAU, FIU, Western Kentucky, Middle Tennessee State, UAB, UTEP, University of Texas at San Antonio, Rice, North Texas, Southern Miss, Old Dominion, Louisiana Tech, and then this team would be a new addition to the conference, Temple. Just from an overall standpoint of logistics, travel, geography, those sorts of things, it honestly makes sense to have those teams in the conference here and going forward. So there you go. That's how I would have the conferences in the NCAA aligned. Just from what I think makes sense. So again, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for your continued support. And stay tuned next week for some great content on here. And have a great day. God bless.